Good morning, everybody. It's Barb Katie. As you can tell, it's a wonderful, wonderful day here in West Virginia, and I'm taking full advantage of it by sitting out here on the deck and getting a chance to talk with you. I just love this time of year. It's just so refreshing and so relaxing. I had a cup of coffee. Everything is pretty much ready to start the day. I got my walk in early. When it was still cool because it's supposed to get up a little bit humid and hot today. And I love the freshness of the morning when I get around to being able to walk that early. Doesn't always happen. Things sometimes get in the way, but today was exceptionally good. What I'd like to maybe discuss with you a little bit this morning is something that I find I need to remind myself of on a pretty regular basis. And that's the importance of communication, of actually talking meaningfully with each other, frequently with those we care about, with those we work, with our friends, with our families, etc. What I've found is that positive, confident communication really does improve our relationships with each other, which in turn, for me particularly, makes it easier to manage my relationship with food. Now, maybe that's not you. Maybe you're not one of those people that stuff your feelings into food. Maybe if someone hurts you, you just go right to it directly and address it, or a perceived slight or whatever. You can just openly address it in a positive way. But for many years of my life, I was not able to do that. And I think for me, and maybe a few of the rest of you out there, that might have been the case as well growing up. I can always remember my mom saying to me, Barbara Ann, do not make a scene. So if something happened that was upsetting, we were taught from a very early age to internalize our emotions, hold them within, and just smile and be pleasant as if the world was just perfectly hunky-dory. And that didn't always work too well with me because sometimes I had things I really wanted to say and I was reluctant to do so. One of the things I have discovered as I've matured, oh, I love that word, matured, my relationship with others is an important part of coping well with my relationship with food and with my body in general. Intention and attention within relationships with others reduces conflict, decreases emotional distress, increases your opportunities to meet your needs, makes for more satisfying connections with others, and decreases the likelihood, for me anyway, that I will turn to food to try to meet my needs when it comes to building satisfying relationships. An important part of replacing food in dealing with situations, especially relationships, is to realize that food is there to nourish our bodies and fuel them, not there to handle all other needs. And I think we grow up learning this very, very early. Can any of you remember, I don't remember what company it was, but it was a company that sold pre-prepared mixes of some type. And it said, nothing says loving like something from the oven. And right away, that says food meets your emotional needs. Food is where you go to experience feelings of love and nurturing. And that's not always a really good connection to encourage and grow. Also, I found that in times of grief, if especially if I needed to be strong and supportive for everybody else in my family, what I would tend to do would be do what I needed to do for everybody else. And then instead of letting my emotions out, the pain I was feeling, the sorrow, the grief, I would go and eat something. And that something would say love, and I would feel comforted by the food. And it gets all messed up inside my head sometimes in that way. So it's very, very important to manage the relationships with people and keep them separate from the connection to food. And two things I want to mention right here are intention. You know, I think our intentions always need to be respectful, attentive, and loving toward others, but also toward ourselves. Uh, we may have the best of intentions, but are these intentions meeting those criteria? Are they respectful? Are they attentive? And are they loving? We don't always have to say everything, especially if the remark may be unkind or hurtful or less than loving. Even though you think you know best, doesn't mean you have to share that with someone else in an authoritarian, hurtful way. And then the other part of this is attention. And everyone deserves your attention when we're sharing conversations. Interaction needs to have focus for it to be meaningful. You have to be an active listener to really pay attention to what the other person is saying, to validate the other person's comments. Doesn't mean you have to agree, but it means that you let them know you are actually hearing what they're saying. Also, attention means that you have the right to assert yourself in communications. Doesn't mean you have to argue, doesn't mean you have to raise your voice in any way. It just means you do have the right to assert your feelings in a respectful way. Again, attentively, lovingly, respectfully. And these are two separate things. Many times we mean well, and as a child, I was told where good intentions always often led me. So I think about that and smile often, because meaning well is not enough. You have to make sure that you carry through in an attentive, loving, and respectful way when you're talking with other people, because often people quit listening to you. They don't hear you when you are disrespectful, when you are inattentive, or when you're argumentative. And this includes your relationships. If you express your boundaries and needs directly with the goal of improving any relationship in mind, it's going to increase your ability to communicate with each other in a meaningful way and actually get from the relationship the most helpful things. For me, binge behavior can result from using food to stuff down how I really feel, to stuff down dealing with conflict or discomfort or painful emotions. For example, people who are afraid of conflict and expressing anger may avoid confrontation and instead turn their anger inward onto themselves and bottle it up until we ultimately express it in an outburst that really does no one any good because it is out of control and it's scary when someone really has an outburst. And then this reinforces the fear of being able to express when we are not happy with something because we feel maybe we can't manage our emotional uh, needs as successfully as we should. Anger is a normal emotion, and it can be managed appropriately. I learned with my sons that I was much better off to just have an honest talk with them in the moment about whatever it was. And it got to be really interesting how helpful that was. We actually would sit, they would come in from something and maybe they'd been out late. Um, maybe your kids never did that, but I had teenage boys and college boys, and they did things that didn't always please their mother as best it could. And I would just say, this is not making your mom a happy camper. I think we need to have a discussion. And it was just out there in the open for us to look at, examine, and see what we can do to negotiate a better path that was going to help all of us. Because usually my concerns had to do with their safety and well-being more than anything else. My brain would go terrible places. I would find them in my head over a cliff, wrecked, with no way of getting in touch with anybody. Just terrible scenarios that I could paint inside my head, which fueled the flame of upset and concern until they finally walked into the door perfectly fine, knew where they were, knew they were safe, but I didn't know. And so good communication really is essential. And I cannot tell you how many nights I sat up waiting for my sons eating because that helped keep me calm. Unhelpful. And then that fueled the flame too, because then I carried that. If you boys would just call and let me know where you are, I wouldn't be upset and I wouldn't be eating this. Wrong. Totally wrong. What I needed to do was take responsibility for my thoughts, my feelings, and needs, and to reassure myself that we were going to get through this and we were going to have good, healthy, self-protective boundaries in these relationships. And it was always the negotiation process. I had to articulate clearly to my sons and to pretty much everyone with whom I interact on a regular basis what I really need from them. I think we a lot of times assume that we're mind readers, and we're not. Uh, we cannot read other people's minds. They cannot read our minds. We have to be willing to say the words in order to get us from point A to point B successfully. At least I have found that to be the case for me as I have moved through my life in various capacities. So where do I place my needs relative to other people? I don't need to be aggressive about it. My needs are no more important than anybody else's. All of us have needs that need to be met on a regular basis. But I don't need to be passive about it. I don't need to always put everybody else's needs ahead of mine. It really is okay for me to be assertive. When I can find a healthy balance between what I need and those others in my life need, then we're going to make progress. We are going to be much better at communicating and not carry with us unnecessary emotional baggage that we have stuffed away that may actually color our relationships and lead us to using food as a coping technique, a handy coping mechanism. Because one of the things I found was food was always there. It was always available. It always never argued. It just was there when I reached for it. And that was something I really had to look at when I was trying to develop healthier ways of communicating with everyone. Um, it takes a little time, I think, to build up the confidence to positively communicate with each other. I think a lot of times we say to ourselves, well, I don't want to hurt them, their feelings. I don't want to make them mad. I don't want to argue. But what I have understood through time is I have rights too. You have rights too. All of us have the right to express our feelings in a kind, loving, calm way. And we own our feelings. Uh, it's not fair for anybody else to argue with us, well, you shouldn't feel that way. They're my feelings. I own them. It's okay for me to feel this way. And I'm letting you know this is how I feel. I don't expect you necessarily to solve it. I just expect you to understand that this is how I hear and how it impacts me when you say the things you do. And so, one of the things I learned is people hear me better when I use the I word. If I use the you word, they don't always hear me. Statements such as I give me ownership. Statements such as you actually put the onus on you to deal with the situations. When you say things like, you hurt my feelings, well, that's accusatory. And the other person becomes defensive, and that actually sometimes pushes them further away. But when I say, I feel hurt, then I have ownership of the feeling. And I have a right to do that. But I need to follow it with some constructive help. It's okay to say, I feel hurt when you do whatever, or when this happens, and I need you to say this in a different way. Maybe I need you to not raise your voice to me. Some people are very sensitive to the volume of words or the actual words used. But you start your conversation with the I word, then it gives them a chance to look at you and learn from what you're actually saying instead of being on the defensive and say, well, I don't do that. You're wrong if you interpret it that way. The key critical component to me in good communication, which has really helped me when it comes to not using food as my main source of coping with poor communication, is that all my words are said with love and appreciation. And usually our feelings are hurt because we care about the individual who said whatever they said. And we tend to internalize it because we so much want to please them. Another thing that I have found that's helpful when we're having serious conversations is to put down the cell phone. Do not use it as a distractor, because there's not much worse in this world when you're trying to have heart-to-heart with someone, then there's the other person's cell phone keeps dinging and they keep glancing down to it. Oh, got to answer that. Oh, got to answer that. It's not going to enhance your communications at all. Also, to use non-defensive body language when you're having a conversation with somebody else. It really is important to keep yourself open. If you start your conversation with your arms crossed and a pouty face on, chances are you're not going to be heard the same way if you don't cross your arms and you relax and keep your facial language more open and receptive. Making eye contact with another person really helps when you want to say something important for both of you to hear. And then keep your voice calm. Don't raise it. It doesn't help at all. Usually hearing is not their issue. Usually it's something else. And keep your message clear and simple. Spend some time thinking about why you found something upsetting before you have the conversation. The only thing I know is it is very important to not reach for food to meet your communication needs with those you love. Be attentive, keep your intentions respectful, and appreciate always your right to assert yourself and claim your role in the life you live. That's all I have for today. Go out there and tell other people you love them, but you're feeling a little bit funky because some of their actions aren't always exactly what you need. See if you can negotiate a path to even more happiness in your life. Tell them when they're doing it right. Tell them how much you love when they do something that pleases you. That too is an assertive way of communicating. Very often, nobody says anything until something goes wrong. And we need to say things when everything is going right and appreciate each other more. Talk to you later. Love you. Bye.